last week we talked about propagating herbs, and this week we're going to talk about lettuce, regrowing lettuce and celery. So, okay, I don't know if the presentation is going to come up, but we'll just keep talking until it does. So with lettuce and celery, the process for regrowing is pretty much the same, but I'm going to show you how to do both. Okay, here it comes. Oh, great, cool. Oh, all right. So for our grocery store gardening series, we're regrowing vegetables. So why even bother doing it? Like, what's the point? You know, it's just extra work. But if you regrow your celery and lettuce, you're reducing food waste, you're stretching your dollars, which is always good. It's not that hard, and you're providing yourself with more food and a plant to look at. And plants don't only feed your body, they feed your soul. Next slide, please. So how do you reduce food waste? You're saving something that doesn't need to be thrown away. You can get more out of it than just one salad or one soup. And you're stretching your dollar because you're basically feeding yourself for free a couple of more times with the same thing that you already bought. And if you take care of it and you live in a place that will allow it climate-wise, you can keep these going for quite a while. Next slide. And it's easy. Like, it will take 5 minutes. So why not try it? And if it doesn't work, try it again. You know, I'm sad to hear about the loss of Pastor Brown's lettuce, but you know, he can try it again. It's not like he's lost a pineapple, which, you know, you can regrow pineapples, but it takes a whole year. With the lettuce, it's easy to try again. And nutritious food for the body and beautiful food for the soul. You get plants, which, you know, will provide you oxygen, will provide you something to look at, provide you something to take care of, as well as something that will take care of you by providing you with food. Next slide. Okay, so last week we talked about propagation. This time we're talking about regrowing. And what's the difference? We're not creating new plants with the celery and lettuce. We're just prolonging the life of a plant that already exists versus creating brand new, separate, independent plants, which is what plant propagation is. So even though this is being done asexually, it is not propagation. And like I said, we're just continuing the life cycle of a plant that we've purchased. Next slide. Okay, so the plant anatomy, we talked a little bit about it before, but let's talk about it again. So plant parts, it's fairly simple. The stem, which I'm sure we can all recognize. And then the place where the leaf connects to the stem is called the petiole. And you can see by the red arrow, the petiole is what takes the nutrients from the stem to the leaf. Why is this important? Why does that matter? Because that's what celery is. People call it a stalk, they call it a leaf. It's not. It's the thing that takes the nutrients from the stem to the leaf. And the node is where the petiole meets the stem, which is what we use to propagate our herbs with our stem cuttings, with our leaf cuttings, excuse me. And then the terminal bud. So that's the bud at the top of the plant. That's where the growth takes place to keep the plant growing up. There's also lateral buds, which helps the plant grow out. And lettuce is the terminal bud. So even though you see the little stump at the bottom of the head of lettuce, that is actually the stem. So the whole head of lettuce is the bud. So that's where all the growth takes place. And I know this might sound a little much, but if you know how the plant grows, it'll be easier when you buy more vegetables and you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, this comes from this part of the plant, so I can try this to regrow it. I can try this to propagate it. So next slide. So different parts of the plant give us different vegetables. And here are some examples. So, you know, the leaves, spinach, bulbs, or onions. So the bulb is actually a modified stem, or, sorry, modified leaf. So the onion is not a root. It grows underground, but it's not a quote unquote root. Broccoli is actually underdeveloped flower buds. Sweet potatoes are swollen roots. White potatoes are swollen stems. Next slide. And through breeding and evolution, we've come up with all these different vegetables and plants that we eat. So on this, we see here that the lettuce comes from the main bud, and the celery comes from the petiole. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so a petiole, which is the celery, the stalk of celery, because there are leaves at the tip of the celery. So and this little stump at the bottom, that's the stem. So the in between is the petiole, and the petiole is a stem-like appendage that connects the leaf to the stem. And where it connects to the stem is the node, and that's where new roots would come. So which is why when we put it in water, that's where the roots come out. The leaf blade for leaf, so there's two kinds of lettuce, leaf lettuce and head lettuce. Leaf lettuce, we're eating the leaves because they're connected, they all come out of the stem and they're just really crowded, so you can't really see the stem. So if you've ever cut open like a cabbage and you see that core on the inside, that's the stem. And on the inside of lettuce, same thing. And the terminal bud is head lettuce, so the leaves are so close together and they're folded over top of each other. That's the difference between head lettuce and leaf lettuce. So next slide. All right, so lettuce is Lactuca sativa. And this is a picture of some leaf lettuce growing in a plot. And like I said before, there's two different kinds. There's leaf lettuce and there's head lettuce. So when you think of head lettuce, like iceberg, how it's a real tight ball, versus leaf lettuce, like butterhead, I think it's called. Romaine would be considered more of a head lettuce just because it's so packed together, even though you do eat it as leaf lettuce when you pull them off. Next. So you can see the difference between the leaf lettuce and the head lettuce. Like I said, the head lettuce, the leaves are really close together and they curve over each other and form a ball. You peel them off individually without breaking them. In leaf lettuce, you can break them off as you eat. Somebody just asked if there's nutrition in lettuce. Lettuce is good for fiber and providing your body with water. So it's not that there's no nutrition, there's just not a lot of calories, and the number of nutrients is lower. So if you're worried about nutrition, eat lettuce with darker leaves. All right, so next is celery. So it's Apium graveolens. There are three different kinds of celery, but here in America, we usually only eat the stalk celery. There's a celery root, which is called celeriac. It has the stems on stalks on top, like what we think of when we think of celery is just really small and you don't really eat it. And it has a much milder celery flavor. And celery has also been bred for seed. So each type of celery they all come from the same original plant, but they were bred for different things. All right, next. All right, so and this picture is just to demonstrate how we know that celery is not a stem versus the petiole. And this is just for basic plant knowledge. A stem is usually round, but not always. But a stem is a closed loop versus the petiole, which is a U-shaped or a crescent shape. And the cut picture of the celery is just so you can see what it looks like on the inside. It's just a bunch of petioles put together. So I'm sure there's a plant that has a similar structure that's big, that's wider and bigger, so you can see it. But basically, it's just a bunch of connections to the stem, and the leaves are at the end. So it would be considered a compound leaf, or a compound leaf. All right, next slide. All right, so here is where I'm going to give you some tips, and then we're going to go into our demonstration. So if you have celery, so now is the time, if you want to follow along, go get your cutting board, go get your knife, go get your celery, go get your lettuce, and we can do this together. Or you can just watch me. It's up to you, but now would be a good time to go get your stuff. Somebody said, what is the function of the petiole? The petiole takes the nutrients from the stem to the leaf. So the vascular system of the plant, you've got the phylum and xylem and the phloem. So one takes water, and the other one takes the sugars that are produced from the leaves. And where the petiole meets the stem is where those would be, where that nutrition would come from to go to the leaf. All right, so tips. If you have limp celery, which I'm sure everybody has had it at some point in time, the best thing to do, assuming it's still edible and you want to keep it, you cut the end off your celery, like the experiment that you probably did in elementary school, and even if you were in the American public schools, I'm sure you may have seen it on some PBS station. If not, trust me, it works. So you cut the end off so that each one of the stalks of celery that you're trying to save has a fresh cut, because you need that fresh cut because it's going to suck up the water that you're going to put them in. So you're going to cut off the bad parts of your celery and put it in ice water. The colder, the better. And you stand it in a cup, in a glass, whatever. And after probably 30, 45 minutes, it will be hard as a rock and like brand new. And even though we're not talking about carrots during this series, if you have limp carrots that they just don't look that good, but you want to salvage them, you get a bowl or some kind of casserole dish, put ice water in it, lay the carrots inside of it, make sure they're submerged, and after about 45 minutes, they'll be hard as a rock and good as new. All right, so salvage your limp celery. It's easy. You can, and if your water's not cold enough, stick the whole thing in the refrigerator, and after about 30, 45 minutes, they'll stiffen back up. Storing lettuce. If you have leaf lettuce, wash it, but don't dry it. And then put a paper towel. Sandwich your leaves between two paper towels. Put it in a Ziploc bag or some kind of container and close it. And your lettuce will usually last upwards of 2 weeks, if not longer. The paper towel keeps it from creating more moisture inside the container. and whatever moisture is in the container, it will keep the leaves from getting soft and gross. And this actually goes back to Pastor Brown's poor lettuce, especially at this time of the polar vortex. Should you regrow your celery and lettuce as a house plant or outside? It depends on what the temperature is like and the climate where you live. If you live somewhere where it gets hot where it gets really hot, I would say keep your lettuce inside. Somebody asked if it will work in the crisper box of the refrigerator. As long as you can keep it, as long as you can keep your paper, if you can keep it in a container, then yes, it'll work. Inside the crisper box, you'd have to line the whole thing with paper towels. Does it work with kale? Yes, it does. So any kind of leaf, it works. So anyhow, house plants versus outside. If it gets really hot where you live, keep your plants inside, but keep them close to a light source that is at least 3 or 4 hours a day, if not longer. When you put them outside, you can't put them outside straight from your house into the ground because they're used to being in your house. You have to slowly acclimate them to the outside, which is similar to hardening off. So you'd have to take your plants outside for a little bit, take them back in the house, take them outside for a little bit longer the next day, take them back in the house, and keep doing that for a couple days. And then you can leave. Then you can put them in the ground or put your pot outside and let it go. And if anybody has any other good tips, shout them out in the chat box. All right, so now we're going to start our demonstration. So let me get this so you can actually see what I'm doing. All right, I'm going to turn off this. I don't know if that's it might be too bright, but I think you'll understand. All right. Does that help? No, it doesn't. It's okay. We'll figure it out. All right. So we're going to start with our celery. So I have celery here, and you should be able to see me cut it. Like I said, sorry for the brightness, but it doesn't affect what I'm doing. So you've got your celery, and you want to regrow it. So the first thing that I would do would be to pull off the outside stalk. So just pull off if there's anything that doesn't look exactly appealing or this celery seen better days. All right, so this little stump here, so this little stump here, sorry. So this little stump here is the stem. And these are the petioles, and the leaves are, the actual leaves. So once you've got it pulled back, I think this one might have a root on it already. Once you've got it pulled back, pull this one off. And the more of the root you have exposed, the better. More of the stem you have exposed, the better. You don't have to do this, but it makes it easier later because then you don't have to worry about taking off stuff as it rots or whatever. So we've got the stem. Wait, somebody asked about the bad pieces. And the pulling off, I think it's better to pull off the outside pieces and expose more of the stem down here, the stump, because you're going to put it in water. And if you can have less of the actual flesh in the water and more of the stem, you don't have to worry about it getting moldy and soft and gross because you're going to end up pulling that off anyway. So if you can avoid that, I say do it. But you don't have to. I just think it makes it easier. All right, so everybody So we cut it probably 2 inches from the bottom, straight across. So all this that got cut off, that I would put into either cook with it now, or this is what I, see how the fresh cut, this is what I would stick into my cup of ice water to make sure that these stay edible. But you don't leave it in the water too long, because, let me see, I need to move this out of the way. Because it'll get soft, like it'll get soft and gross, and so you'd want to change the water every day. And including with this, you want to change the water every day. So this is what we got. And here's the inside, which, let me see. Sorry about this light. There we go. So you're going to take your cup or bowl, and you're going to add in probably at the most an inch of water. I would put it in the, and if it doesn't stand up by itself, figure out a way to prop it up. You can put some rocks in the bottom to level it out, or you can, you know, put something up the top to keep it from rocking or falling over. In this case, luckily it stands up by itself, so I'm not gonna worry about it. So you're gonna put water in it, cover the stem and a little bit up the side, and you wait. And after a couple days, you'll see roots. You'll see white roots start to come out. Once the roots come out, you can plant it if you want to, or you can leave it a little bit longer so it can develop more roots before you plant it. And when you plant it, you can plant it up to where, because the new growth will come out from here, and you can plant it up to where the new growth is coming out if you want to. You can leave some of this exposed. That's up to you. But you definitely want to make sure that the new roots that have formed are in the soil. What's the best temperature to grow the vegetables for? They like it cool, so spring-ish weather, so like max like 70 degrees, somewhere around there. And celery likes a long, relatively cool season just to grow just so. So if you start this in the summertime, keep it in the house, but keep it near a bright light source. If it's grown in a container, what size is best? With celery, you can grow it in a 6 or 8 inch pot. It doesn't have to be that big, especially if you're starting from here. So a 1 gallon pot would probably be the most. Does this process work for leeks? Yes, but leeks is more like regrowing green onions. But yeah, the process is the same. Wait, somebody just asked a question. I missed that one. So when it starts to produce direct partial shade, or okay, if it's outside, it needs partial shade. If it's inside, I would say direct sunlight, because that's all it's getting. So yeah, so when it starts growing, the new sprout out of the top will be dark green compared to whatever, you know, compared to the color of the celery in the store, because you rarely get green celery, but when you regrow it, it comes out like super dark, and the flavor is a little bit stronger, which I personally prefer. But yeah, you can end up with a whole new plant, and because celery is a biennial, that means it takes 2 seasons for it to produce seeds. If you play your cards right, this could turn into a house plant that that will last unless your house gets super duper hot. And this can provide you with more celery for a while. I mean, you're probably not gonna end up with the size that you started with, but you can get celery for quite a while after you've begun. All right, so does anybody have any more questions about celery? We can move on to lettuce. Felt pots. Yeah, as long as they don't get too hot, I think you could do it in the felt pot. I don't see why not. And the one thing about celery is especially if you grow it from seed, it likes water. So just make sure you water your celery plant more than you would water your other plants. How many times can the same stump be replanted? Well, if you probably just one, because if you don't put it in soil, like it'll eventually rot just because it's sitting in water. But if you put it in the soil, I mean, the outside will disintegrate and only the center will be growing. So you couldn't replant it. Well, I mean, I guess it would depend on the root development. If the roots develop well enough, you could probably dig it up and move it. And also assuming that it hasn't gone to seed. So potentially, if you planted it, you could move it and like move it from outside to a pot inside or something like that. Like if you could keep it, yeah, exactly. If you could keep the root system intact, you could try it. You could try moving it. All right. So can we move on to our lettuce, or does anybody have any more celery questions? And if you have questions, please ask. How many celery plants come from one item? Each celery plant it came from one seed. So how many stalks of celery can you get? A few. But how many plants will come from it? Just the one. And if you take care of it and it goes to seed, then you've got then you've got potential for more celery than you'll ever know what to do with. And celery seed is used in cooking, so if it does go to seed, you've got free spice. Okay, can you cut the growth and leave the roots? You can.
I have one question. Hi, Josie. I'm actually in my car, so I'm driving, and I didn't want to miss the session, but can you plant the celery seeds that you buy in the store, the spices, the seeds in the little container that you buy? Can you plant those?
Technically, yes. As long as they're not too old, yes. The one thing about celery is it takes a long time for them to sprout, so don't get too anxious, but you can try it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, celery takes a while to sprout, and it takes 4 months to grow. So if somebody is going to try this, it's better if you live in a place where it doesn't get super hot. And don't get too antsy about somebody asked, too antsy about it not coming up. How long does it take for new roots to show up? I might have some by tomorrow. I might have some by Monday. Like it only takes a couple days for new roots to pop out. And it also depends on how old your celery was before you rooted it. So it might take a little bit longer because where it was cut to put it into the packaging, like how much that has calloused over will have some effect on when the new roots come. So that's also why I like pulling off the old outside leaves, because you're exposing more of the new, more of the stem that hasn't been cut. So it has like fresh cells, and they're ready to send out roots. Okay. Wait, what did the seeds on the plant that was just cut look like? Oh, celery seeds. I couldn't show them to you on camera because they're so tiny. If you see celery seed at the grocery store in a jar, that's it. So you just, next time you're at the grocery store, go to the spice aisle and look. Should you put it in soil as soon as you see the first roots? You can. I would probably wait a little bit to have more roots so that I knew that it could take care of itself. I mean, you only need one, but if you have more, you have a better chance of everything working out. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the lettuce. And then at the end, if you come up with an, how do you cut the new growth? Oh, you would just cut it at the ground. You would just cut it at the ground. Excuse me. So now we're going to talk about lettuce. So this is one from actually dinner I had the other night. I pulled it off. I pulled the outside leaves off. That's the part we ate, and it exposed more of the stem, which remember we talked about earlier. Because this is the terminal bud, which means all the growth is on the inside of here. And I exposed all the stem to the water, so I can actually see some of the roots are coming out, but they're too small to see on the camera. And how I have it in the water is so that none of the leaves actually touch. So it means this can still grow and I can still eat off of it without the leaves getting nasty. And sometimes you see the lettuce that you buy with the root ball still on it. You can use those. You can do that too with those. Do this as well with those. You keep those roots damp so that they don't dry out, and only remove the outside leaves that you're going to eat. Don't get rid of all of them. Keep at least the little new leaves in the middle, and then just plant the whole thing up to the bottom of the leaves and the top of the root ball. Don't bury the whole thing. All right. So, sorry. Got my set. So this is the package of Artisan Heads lettuce. There were 4 small heads of leaf lettuce in the package. And sorry for the noise. I wanted to keep them as moist as possible. So when you get containers like these, and if they've got space in the bottom, put a little bit of water down there so that the roots can touch, and it'll keep them alive a little bit longer. And just put a little bit. You don't have to put very much. And the condensation and the roots being in the water, it'll keep the plants alive, and it might even start to root it. All right, so we're going to go with this one. So a lot of the tutorials that you see are with romaine lettuce. This will work with just about any kind of lettuce, as long as you can expose the stem end. So in this case, so this is called frise. It's just a weird kind of, the leaves kind of look like fingers on the end. So in this stem is really, really short. So I want to expose as much of it as possible before I cut it. So you're going to remove the outside. And as I said earlier, and as I said last week, when you start doing your grocery store gardening project, do it close to the time that you plan on eating. because there's no reason to just do this and then chunk all this stuff away. It's like, you're saving nothing. So here we go. Trying to expose as much of this stem as possible. And you take the outside leaves off and work your way in. And as Michael said about the cut and come again, that's how cut and come again works. You remove the outside leaves so that you keep the inside growing. Because if you kill the inside, you're done. So now more of the stem is exposed than it was before. And you know, you can get as close as you want to. So we're definitely having salad for lunch. That's for sure. All right. And on the inside, you can see the new little buds popping out. In this case, you can't so much, but on this one, I can see them. You see where the new stuff comes from. Anyhow, so I've got this exposed now a whole lot more than it was. So the stem is probably half an inch now. So, and you would do it the same way you do the celery. Like an inch or two, from the bottom, cut it. You got your dish. And this one falls over, so I'm going to prop it up against the side. But, in another case, you could put a rock down here or something just to keep it standing up. We've got and cover up just the stem. Well, you can go higher, but I don't particularly like to, just because, it's just going to get gross. Yeah, there you go. It's the same idea as the celery. Change the water every day or every other day. Because, these plants are heavy drinkers. So they're, used to having lots of water in their tissues, but they're not used to sitting in water. And sitting in water, they'll rot. I'm going to remove this because it's bothering me. All right. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So here we go. And yeah, this one that I showed you earlier wasn't, I hadn't pulled all the leaves off of it, but, it's the same idea. Expose the stem, put it in water, and change it out. And by removing the outside leaves, you don't have to change it quite as much because it's most of the water is directly on the root instead of on the fleshy part of the plant. All right. So, any more questions? And thank you, Michael Carter, for jumping in and answering everybody's questions. And I'm done. So now I'll just open up the floor to whoever wants to ask more questions. But can start lettuce and water outside if we don't get direct sunlight in the house. Yes, as long as you don't let it get too cold outside, because the cold will damage the lettuce leaves. And if it's hot, it'll bolt. And bolting means that it sends up a flower stalk and starts to make seeds immediately because it thinks that life is over. In which case, if you really like your lettuce, that's great because now you can have seed to grow your own lettuce for free. Then somebody said about bok choy. You can do this with bok choy as well. All right.
All right, y'all, let's give a round of applause for Josie. Hold on 1 minute. Okay, great. So I hope you all enjoy week 2 of the DIY series. If you have any questions for Josie or for Michael Carter or any of our resident experts in our chat box, feel free to drop those questions in the chat box, as well as I'm about to drop 2 links in the chat box. One of them is a how-to guide that basically, okay, so for the people who didn't take notes, we got your back. We created a how-to guide that lists the steps that Josie gave us during her demonstration. So I'm going to drop that in the chat box for you all if you all have any questions about, or if you think you missed any steps. So all of that will be in the blog post. As well as I mentioned the seed bank previously, and one thing that I neglected to do was drop the link for the seed bank. So if y'all are interested in receiving any seeds from the Black Church Food Security Network, you can sign up to be a member for our seed bank. And the seed bank is free, and it works just like a seed library. You know, when you go to a library, you check out a book, you read it, and then you return it for someone else to read it in the spirit of like community sharing. So our seed bank is going to work the same way. So you are going to check out a seed, a packet. We are going to mail it to you. You are going to then plant the seeds. And then once your plants start sprouting, and once they start flowering, you would then take the seeds from those flowers and then mail it back to us, the Black Church Food Security Network, so we can keep regrowing those same seeds and allow other people to use those same seeds that you started. So I'm going to drop those links in the chat box as well. And I know a couple of you are doing container gardening, and you had specific questions around what size container works for specific plants and specific herbs, specifically like the lettuce and the celery today. So I'm going to drop a link from our family over at Soulfire Farm. They created a garden guide, which lists the plant you can grow and in the specific size container you can grow it in. And it even tells you like how many plants can you grow in a certain size container. Because I mean, if we are confessing today, when I first started growing indoor plants, I put lavender, sage, lemon balm in one small container. And then I wondered why they died. I was like, I'm about to be an herbalist. I'm about to have all of this. When COVID-19 hit, I'm about to be secure. Man, a week later, all those plants died. So I want to thank Soulfire Farm for creating this guide for us, so no one else won't make the same mistakes that we did. I'm sorry. And I want to transition really quickly to Pastor Brown because he can't hold any water and he was trying to spill the good news too soon. So I'm going to pass it to him so he can spread the good news to everyone. You ready, Pastor Brown?
You know what? There's so much good news. I don't even know what to share. I will share, though, that we have, first, thank you, Josie. You have inspired me to try lettuce again. Amen. So I'm going to give it another try. And thank you for your information and your demonstration and all the fire in the chat box as well. Just really thank y'all as well. Also, we're excited to announce we started a challenge, y'all. We started a challenge. And some of you may have seen the video, some of you may have not. So if you haven't seen it, I want to share that with you now, just a couple of minutes, and we'll all be leaving in a few moments because we want you to be a part of this. Here is a, oops, wait, stop. Check this out.